Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
So we're driving to school this morning and listening to Wow in the World, which, if you don't know about that, I think it's at least in the top 10, but most times it's the #1 kid podcast. And yes, kid podcasts are a thing. And it basically plays out like all these different characters are demonstrating different scientific discoveries, and they make a skit out of it, and it's fun. But what I noticed this morning was their topic was actually teaching kids how to make small talk. And I thought, well, isn't that an interesting topic? And it reminded me, of course, of our ever-present Ford discussion, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. And they did go into a whole thing about, when you meet a new kid or you meet a new parent, what should you ask them? You can ask them about their family, you can ask them where they're from, stuff like this. And then they had one of the characters who, to be honest with you, is the most annoying character, I think, on purpose, like how not to sound. And so he comes on there talking all about himself. And they were saying, well, don't you... He was
that
trying...
character a realtor by chance?
Perhaps. I don't know. He maybe should be. But so the other character they were trying to have a conversation. He was trying to make small talk and learn. And the other character said, well, we talked about this the other day. Don't you remember? And an annoying guy goes, well, I don't remember. All I ever do is talk about myself. How would I remember what you said to me?
He definitely was a realtor.
I know, right? So, but isn't there a lesson in that?
Yeah.
And I thought how interesting that I think this is most popular between like 5 and 11 or 12-year-olds. But what a great life skill to get, via a little skit that they're doing, sure. But I thought that, there's a lot of adult lessons in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually pretty amazing because that's kid version of FORD, isn't it?
It is.
Family, occupation, recreation, dreams.
And it was very conversational. And they put it in different lights, like, you're on the playground or maybe you're traveling with your parents and, you feel... Some kids go shy. I mean, we all know this, right? They could be
not our kid
usually, but sometimes kids will clam up in a new situation. And so it's teaching sort of these life skills probably without the kids even knowing about it.
Zoe, actually, what she's a master of is in what she wears when she's not going to school, because that's uniforms, or when she's out and about, she always brings, I don't know how else to describe it other than kid bait.
Toy decoy.
So she'll bring some Barbies with her, and just enough so maybe 3 or 4 other kids that can play with them. Mm-hmm. She'll put something on or wear sparkly shoes. She's going to do things to bring other kids to her.
Yeah.
She's very
clever.
It's a
kid magnet.
Yeah,
for sure.
She is. And again, that's what adult humans do as well.
Yeah, it is.
So anyway, it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun to watch.
So predictions. We're talking about real estate predictions. And
we started this yesterday, so if you missed the beginning, get caught up because this is a continuation. And I think go down to the part where it talks about forbearances underneath where that is.
Okay.
Right there. Okay.
Well, so just to bring them up to date, you guys got to go back and listen to the show we did yesterday on our predictions. We're going to be, I sent Julie, so what is it? Since like maybe 4 days ago, I've been listening to a lot of tech and business and finance and investment type prediction shows because everyone's coming out with their prediction shows at that time of the year. And it's fascinating to me how much everything overlaps no matter what industry it is.
True.
With regards to what their predictions are, probably 90%. But there were a few that I thought really were standouts that didn't overlap. And we're going to definitely make sure you guys are aware of those as we go through these points, because there's a lot of politically motivated predictions that come out that are designed to serve a particular agenda. And I'll give you one in particular that I was just sharing this with Julie. I don't know, did you incorporate this into our notes with regards to
tell me first.
The declining population, global populations?
Yes, we talked about that a little bit a couple of days ago, but there's this thought that bubbles around sometimes that overpopulation is going to cause recession, depression,
mass starvation,
global warming. You can throw around all the terms that you want to in there.
It's dystopian movie, basic.
Use up all our resources.
Theme 2.0, right? I mean, every sort of dystopian movie is going to play into this idea that we're going to enter into this massive era of scarcity where there's not going to be enough food and water and, cue your zombie apocalypse music, right? Well, it turns out the exact opposite is true. And so that's one of the fascinating things that if you were operating as if there was going to be some sort of mass scarcity issues, that does adversely affect your sense of optimism.
Indeed.
Right? If you, again, it goes back to what we were talking about actually prior to us starting this series on our predictions for 2022. You got to be really careful about what the political agenda is. Unfortunately, most things do have a political agenda behind anything you intake as far as content. So as far as just that point goes, and we'll be talking about this more in a second, the exact opposite is true. Nowhere in the world are we seeing rising populations. Most people, actually in most societies, especially Western societies, we're seeing people having fewer kids or no kids. And we're also seeing that trend across planet Earth. And there are exceptions, and this is what's fascinating. The groups of people that are having more children are the ones that are religiously based. You're seeing more children happening with Mormons and more children happening with Jewish people and more Catholics.
Sure.
So they're the ones that, so it's just kind of a fascinating trend to keep an eye on, just to be aware of.
But not so much that we're going to have the overpopulation problem that people will sometimes throw around. And you said it's global. This is not just a U.S. phenomenon. We grew up hearing about 2.5 kids per household, right? I think it's down to like 1.6 or something in the U.S. And in Europe, it's either that or even a smaller rate. And people are waiting longer to get married. There are people who are never getting married. So you can, spin that off into Never Never Land. It is not a real problem.
But Julie, I do, just put a period at the end of the sentence. I do clearly remember, you and I are Generation X, that they were saying the same thing about our generation,
I know.
right? They always, just seems like there's
It's a thing that comes and goes.
Right. Again, it's these prevailing themes that, like you said, come and go depending on, what year you're in as far as the generation.
Well, what I always thought was funny was especially when we first started traveling a lot in our 20s, and we would hear about this overpopulation thing, and then we'd fly over like Nevada.
Yeah, totally.
And there's like houses built right next to each other, next to large swaths of land with absolutely nothing, no utilities, no nothing.
Where we're from in Ohio, it's the same way.
Sure. I mean, you've got your main cities and then large amounts of farmland in between.
Not large amounts. I mean,
like
the large amount.
Thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres.
Right.
The government still owns a ton of land, both in the U.S. and Canada. So, this is one of those things where you've got to do your own fact checking. Okay,
so I would give you a little bit of trivia. I just learned this yesterday. I've heard this before, but I verified it. I actually did some homework on this. Guess who in the United States, guess who in the world, and I'll give you a little bit of advanced hint here.
Okay.
What corporation, owns more real estate than even, it used to be, don't say Catholic Church because it used to be, right? And at one point it was the Queen Elizabeth, but it's not anymore. So what entity, and it is a corporation, owns more real estate than anything else on planet Earth? And not BlackRock either.
I know. I read this a while ago. I can't remember. It's like Google or Amazon or somebody?
Nope. McDonald's.
McDonald's?
Yep, McDonald's.
Wow.
Yep.
Who would have thought that?
Because their main driver of revenue is real estate. And it goes back to the theme of Harris Rules. The whole point of a business is to make profit, and with that profit you buy things that basically produce, passive income for you and asset appreciation. Well, I think we should, even when we come out with Harris Rules 2, if we ever decide to go through that, horrible experience, that we then will say the whole purpose of making a profit in any business is to buy real estate.
Is to invest in real estate. I remember when we were kids, it was roller rinks had a lot of real estate, right? So now people think about McDonald's as hamburgers, but they also have all these real estate holdings.
Your point about the roller rinks was even after the roller rinks failed, a lot of those roller rinks turned into big warehouses.
They still had an asset.
Exactly.
That's right.
So anyway, just different little things.
Trying to relate it back to real estate.
Right, exactly. So we're going to talk about forbearances. And this is something, again, I read the headlines. You guys read the headlines. Though fortunately, it seems like there was a big surge of BS artists that were trying to inundate you guys with fear and loathing. The real estate markets were going to crash. No, those guys will come back out of their rabbit holes here, probably in a matter of months, trying to get you freaked out about there going to be some sort of real estate crash in 2022 or 2023 because of all the forbearances. And we have beat on that misinformation as much as we can, but Julie's drilled down.
Hopefully you're really clear. And, they've not all been listening as long as we've been talking about it. But so forbearances, here's the education piece. Definition of forbearance: it is when your mortgage servicer, that's the company that sends your mortgage statement and manages your loan, or your lender, allows you to pause or reduce your payments for a limited period of time. In the case of the pandemic, it was up to 18 months. Forbearance does not erase what you owe. You'll have to repay any missed or reduced payments in the future through refinance, sale, or just paying it off. Now, everyone was predicting, as you said, Tim, that there would be a tsunami of foreclosures as a result of the 5 million forbearances. That's a lot of forbearances that happened at the beginning and then further into the pandemic. But that did not happen. We are mostly through the woods now, evidenced by the fact that we are actually back to regular levels of forbearance now. It could have been a factor, but it has not played out. Don't pay attention to the social media and YouTube chatter. There are dedicated websites to this. I forget what they're called, but they should be going away now. This time is not like that time. Foreclosures are not a thing at this time. It will not be an impact. So why is that? Well, credit is way, way, way higher now. Much less risk to lenders. A lot of the stuff that crashed in the housing crash had really crappy credit. We don't have those problems right now. The average credit scores right now are 760 or higher, which is the highest it's ever been. Homeowners have more equity in their homes than ever before, so that means when they sell it, they can pay off the forbearance if necessary. Let's see. And so that's the conclusion of the four main factors we were talking about at play when making predictions. So yesterday, we talked about demand, inventory, affordability, and interest rates. We've got two additional factors, and then we get to our specific predictions.
Okay, two additional factors that we took into consideration when creating these predictions, so you guys
Which
know,
sometimes apply.
Which you know, so we are giving all this information to you so that if you guys are wanting to come up with your own predictions, or if you want to check any of the our premises of our predictions, you guys can use the same baseline information so you can essentially, create your own predictions. Really, the whole point of anything that when you're trying to learn something, you got to learn it from all sides. So Julie and I just shared with you our predictions with regards to there being no, and again, the only point I'd add to that, Julie, is the government would never in a billion years allow there to be a bunch of foreclosures. It just would never happen.
Here's the good news about that. Again, this is not like the previous go-around. It turns out that the forbearance plan was a really good plan to get people through the woods.
And that's the whole reason that they did the forbearance plan, was so that there wouldn't be a big mess of people missing house payments.
And it worked.
And it totally worked.
Which
and
is
guess
great.
what's going to happen, guys? The banks now, even if let's say it's 2 years from now, you have some issue that you can't make a house payment, and normally you'd basically be missing house payments, go into foreclosure. You call up the bank's going to have a pathway for you to follow to go into forbearance so you can get your mortgage caught back up. Now, when Julie and I sold real estate, there was no formalized plan like that.
No, here was the plan. You pay, you stay. You don't, you won't.
Exactly.
Get out.
And nowadays, it's not like that at all. You can't make your payment. Let's work something out. Can't make it for 6 months. Let's work something out. A year. Let's work something out. And that's what they're going to do, because virtually every mortgage essentially is controlled by the U.S. government.
And now we have stats that encourage these big lenders to make it okay to extend forbearances and do workouts, which is awesome. So let's go to the next two additional factors, which sometimes apply to predictions. Number one is enthusiasm for housing. After the housing crash, people lost their will to buy homes, unless they were a, quote, deal, for several years. People wondered if the American dream would ever come back or if it would die forever. Eventually, frugality fatigue happened, rates started to come down, loans became easier to get, and the enthusiasm came back in a really big way. That's what we're living right now. HGTV, Bravo, even National Geographic channels all have wall-to-wall homes shows on every day. Everyone's an armchair realtor, flipper, investor, or vacation rental expert. The enthusiasm is absolutely there.
It's also fascinating, Julie, when we go to the bookstore, and Julie and I love to go to Barnes & Noble when there is one, right? And we always love to go in and see our book on the shelf that, I don't think that'll ever get old.
Nope.
But it is fascinating in the business section of books. You see in essentially sometimes motivation section of, all these, quasi-parallels. Right. It's a lot of them are written by these Bravo TV sort of real estate famous
celebrity types.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was not around prior to really probably 2011. So there's a whole generation of people that have come into real estate, where being in real estate, being a famous agent or whatever, that's an aspirational thing. Whereas a lot of you who are our age, or maybe even older, frankly even younger, you guys will remember real estate was, for the most part, it didn't attract people that chose real estate. Real estate sort of chose them because they were out of options. And yet a lot of people are getting into real estate part-time. But now you have people that are getting into real estate as their first choice as a career, or they're in another career and they want to stop doing whatever it is that they're doing, even if it was a very credentialed career, and they want to get real estate licenses.
Yeah, well, it's a goal, not a backup plan.
Exactly, or a backup to the backup plan, which is what it had been for generations.
Indeed. So number two that sometimes is at play, and it certainly is now, inflation. And again, we refer you back to the Peter Schiff interview that's maybe 2 weeks old at this point, maybe 2.5. Easy to find on your podcast feed. So inflation, in non-inflationary times, inflation still exists, but it's at a much smaller rate and we don't really notice it. Housing prices used to mirror the inflation rate in most markets. You could actually figure out how to price a home based on what somebody paid, then take the inflation rate times the number of years owned and end up with a pretty accurate price. And it was like that for a long time.
And that's really what the appraisers would do sometimes too.
Absolutely. It was really a starting point. You would do that first, and then you would check your comps, and you would, maybe make some adjustments, but it was pretty close.
Let's frame that out so they can actually wrap their minds around
Sure.
it. So you used to be able to, for example, let's say back when the average sale price was around $200,000, and I know it's basically double that now, but there was a point when, and not too long ago, where it was $200,000. And what you'd have is you could, if you weren't in the house for, usually it was going to be, think about it. So if you put the house for sale, you're going to have, let's say collectively, a 10% selling fees to sell the property between real estate commissions and closing costs.
Taxes.
So if that $200,000 house was, and you have to pay interest on the loan. So if you're in that house for 5 years and you are paying, let's say, $1,500 a month or $18,000 a year, that's, around $100,000 a year, most of which went to interest. You guys add all up the actual cost of owning a home for 5 to 7 years, and then you flushed it out with the net proceeds after selling it. You are lucky in most of the United States to get your down payment back even after 5 years. You would buy a house, and then you'd say, well, I paid $200 for it and I sold it for $250. Okay, but what was the interest you paid on that loan? What was the cost of owning the home that was like the roof that you had to replace that really
carrying
didn't increase
costs,
the value?
we would call it.
That didn't increase the value. Replacing the windows, the air conditioners, that didn't, those things you spend, $10,000 on it, it's maybe worth $1,000 more in terms of value. You guys get the point? So ultimately what happens is that the math has pivoted now, because most of the country is appreciating. What was it? Goldman Sachs, Julia, predicted there's going to be 16% inflation in home values next year. You can actually get into a house now, and within sometimes a matter of months, you can be ahead of what the carrying costs would be. So you get to live in a house for free, in essence.
Yes.
You still have to make the payment.
By the way, click on that. By the way, that also plays into enthusiasm. Right?
Yep.
So these things are intertwined. If you know that, your payment's going to be this, but the house is doing that, and, you're basically living for free, that's a pretty good reason to be investing in housing.
But add to this, you have now a whole generation. Read your next point. Actually, that was really good. You were right here. Yep.
Okay. So
right there.
Rising inflation shouldn't deter house hunters from buying a home, the chief economist of NAR, National Association of Realtors, said Friday. History shows that owning a home has proven to be a good hedge against inflation since the, quote, whip inflation now days of the 1970s. Lawrence Yun told the trade group gathered in San Diego for its first in-person conference in 2 years. In all but 2 of the past 5 decades, average home price gains have matched or exceeded the inflation rate, Yun said. And in the 2 cases where home prices lagged inflation during the 1980s and the 2000s, they were just a tiny amount below the pace at which the cost of goods increased. So, in conclusion, buying real estate will always be a great hedge against inflation, and for most people, the best investment that they can make.
So I mentioned I was watching and listening to a lot of financial, content, basically. Yes. And the hilarious thing is, even though the big talking heads that are selling their, whatever their securities is, their mutual funds or their this is and their that, they're all saying buy real estate.
I know.
Isn't
More
that amazing?
Enthusiasm, right?
And they don't make any money when you buy real estate.
That's right.
So for someone who is a bigwig from Wall Street saying buy real estate, and he has no reward for saying that financially benefit. Matter of fact, he could actually have some of his investors sell the investments that he is making money off of and buy real estate. You got to really be drilling down on how seriously this inflation thing is going to get. I started out our series on this yesterday or the day before by saying we are all underestimating how significant the effects of inflation are going to be, not just financially, but societally.
Yes.
This is going to be a sea change, monumental, emotional, horribleness. And, if you look at it in a short term, it's going to cause a lot of consternation, a lot of pain and confusion. But long term, if you're looking at where the benefits come from this, it's being strategic and listening to the points we're giving, because you guys can then position yourselves to make whatever benefits there are, make the most of this inflationary time.
Well, to make good decisions for yourself and also be able to counsel your clients and handle objections like, well, I'll just wait for the market to cool off, that sort of thing. And Tim, didn't you just tell me today, speaking of inflation, was it Tyson that said that they were raising prices? Like
chicken was up. I just read this to you, so I actually remember it. Chicken is there. Tyson has or is raising prices on chicken by 19%,
It's a ton.
and pork and beef are going up by 33%.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and think about that. That's Tyson, who is essentially a massive producer.
Yes.
So they're a low-cost producer.
Right, we're not talking about high-end steaks or
Right.
something like that. We're talking about chicken nuggets, people.
Yeah,
it's on my grocery list.
So you're, and that's the raw cost of the product. So Julie stuck around with chicken nuggets. So think about this: if you're McDonald's, or if you're making chicken nuggets, the chicken nuggets you're going to make, that's just your raw cost has now gone up by say 19%. That doesn't include the cost of the labor to make them, the cost to manufacture them. So you're going to see in some cases, just on chicken nuggets, to Julie's point, you could see the cost of chicken nuggets for your little 8-year-old like ours go up by as much as 50%. So when people start going, so normal lifestyles are going to be adversely affected because of the rising cost. It's not like you can avoid it, you see. So if, for example, chicken nuggets were expensive and you took your kid to McDonald's, if you go to McDonald's, we don't, but if you did, and you tell little Bobby or Susie to order something other than chicken McNuggets. But everything is going to be more expensive. Yes. People in our lifetimes, and Julie and I are basically 50. Well, she's 50, I'm 51. But in our lifetimes, I just said it. I'm only supposed to admit you're 35. Anyway. So in our lifetimes, we've never really experienced inflation like what we are experiencing and going to experience. So if you think you're noticing gas prices now and food prices now, 12 months from now, everyone's going to be talking about it. Now, again, I'm trying to study. I understand that from a numerical perspective, from a financial perspective. I get it. Stuff costs more money. I get it. Wage earners are going to be the ones that are affected the most because they're going to be their wage increases are going to happen the slowest, which means they're going to suffer the most. I also get that this rising cost of home prices is going to squeeze out a potential entire generation of people from buying homes because they waited too long.
Yes.
I get all that.
That's one of our prediction points, by the way.
I understand all this conceptually and intellectually, but what I don't understand is what happens to society as a result of some experience like this. The only thing that we can harken back to truly encapsulate what might happen would be what happened after the housing crash. And Julie and I have used the example of what happened after the Great Depression on people's behavior, how it actually I don't know if it literally or just, if it changes the DNA. We talked about the fact that a lot of people they became hoarders after the Great Depression because stuff became hard to get. Sure. And stuff became more valuable than money in some cases. Glass and aluminum and metal and rubber bands.
My prediction is more chicken coops so people can have their own eggs.
Entirely possible.
And victory gardens, which were the gardens people planted after World War II or during World War II so they could grow their own vegetables and things like that.
So I like how you're going with the positive, and that's where I was going.
Because seeds are less expensive than paying for more expensive vegetables.
But people will become less dependent.
Yes, that's right.
I think I think ultimately, this is the reason I think the meta-universe thing is pretty much some bullshit too. I've been reading a lot about that. So the assumption is, and that people that are geared a certain way assume that people want to be taken care of. And now I am being political, but such is the way. People underestimate the fact that most people want more than anything to be independent,
that's right,
not dependent.
Freedom.
Most of these prognosticators are basing their predictions, right, on the idea that people want to be dependent. And I don't think that's true. That hasn't been my observation at all. When given the opportunity to be be free or to be dependent, people always choose to be free. The reason that some people want to convince you that most people want to be dependent is because they want people to be dependent on them.
That's right. And again, not to be political, just to be, an anthropologist in a sense. I read an article that the question was, why is it that Americans have this resistance to being told what to do vaccine-wise versus other countries which are like, okay, let's just go do it? And the premise wasn't even really political necessarily. They were saying Americans have this underlying sense of freedom from the beginning that they just don't like being told what to do. And they interviewed people that were like, I don't have a problem with the vaccine. I have a problem with being told that I have to get the vaccine, which I think is interesting that there is this underlying theme of freedom. We're American at the end of the
just
day.
Because Julie's not being sensitive to the political natures of talking about the vaccine.
I know.
We are both vaccinated. My mom just got her booster vaccine yesterday. We're going to get our daughter vaccinated, so we're not anti-vaccine. But again, this is going back to the very DNA of Americans, really, as the desire not to be dependent.
Right.
But it is interesting to me, and I'm not talking about just obviously the government wants you to be dependent on it, especially left-leaning governments, but also corporations want you to be dependent too.
Yep.
And can you imagine this fantasy that Mark Zuckerberg has that we're all going to be wearing these things and checking into the metaverse? If you guys haven't seen Ready Player One, which is very nerdy, but you all should get that movie. That's going to be your homework from today's show. Watch the movie Ready Player One this weekend, and you'll get a vision of what Mark's referring to. You know, they think literally that people are going to wake up in the morning, do their morning whatevers, right? And then they're going to sit down in some chair and put on and plug right in. Will there be people that do that? Yes, but I cannot conceive that.
But what's the ramification?
That's not. Well, here's the ramifications. Yep. The people that plug in are going to lose out on life.
Yep.
And the people that don't plug in are going to be the winners. They're going to own the world. They're going to own the universe.
I think you're right. And I think
it's going to be an advantage not to be a plugger-inner.
Right. And I think that people get bored with it faster than maybe predicted. I look at, Zoe even could, because, every kid can get every app, right? So she'll be like she was addicted to this thing called Dragon City for like 2 weeks. It's all she wanted to do. And then one day she just got over it. And I wonder whether there will be plug-in fatigue at some point where people will just be like, it was great for a while, but now, I'm not into it. So I think there's a lot of different angles that you can watch on that.
The technologists in particular, they underestimate the thing that's hardwired into all of us not to be dependent.
Yes.
So I also look, for example, our coaching, right? Our coaching, one of the tenets of what we try to get everyone to understand is, as much as you can, avoid building your mansion or your house, your future, on land you don't own. And we made it land you don't own because it's a real estate analogy. But don't build your business on things like, for example, if you guys have built your business on buying leads from Zillow, how'd that work out? If you built your business on branding and social media, how's that working out? You guys get the point? You can't own it, so you can't control the longevity of it. All it takes is, for example, the SEO gods decide, that'd be Google, to decide to change a couple things in the algorithms, and all the years you spent building your SEO just goes out the window. Those are the types of things that happen when you build your business on land you don't own. But that's the exact same thing that we're sensing is happening amongst agents. So many agents, especially the younger ones. I have more optimism about the people that should be more into social media than the people that are younger, the millennials and the ones younger. I actually think they're the ones that are the smartest with regards to what social media is and isn't. And I'm noticing that our podcasts and just general, our feedback that we're getting from people is that they know what it is and it isn't. And they're the ones that are embracing the idea that they're going to unplug from this sort of meta universe, social, online, whatever, and they're going to learn real communication skills.
And it's going to give them a huge advantage in the world.
It is, and that's ultimately the reason. That's what's motivating them. Because if they know how to communicate and their competitors don't, because their competitors are making TikTok videos of them dancing around for sale sign.
I know.
And how asinine is that? Yeah. And they're believing all of this, and they're the ones that are learning their scripts and their dialogues, what to say and how to say it.
Sure.
They're going to kick ass in their marketplace.
Definitely. We see that with coaching clients that, there's a joke amongst our premier coaching agents, right? We play challenges and victories on our Facebook Live. And one of the things is, to share your victories. And many, many times they circle back to the basic coaching tenet called pick up the damn phone.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they'll talk to each other and they'll say, when somebody will post, well, I texted and emailed, but I haven't heard back. And people are like, pick up the damn phone. Go there. Knock on the door. Have real conversations.
You don't have to. Doesn't that just intuitively make sense to all of you? Look, Julie and I, well, I'll just be honest, I have gotten myself in hot water with some of these different companies that sell bullshit to you guys. I made a commitment that a couple of years ago, Julie and I were not going to hold back with regards, it's unfiltered, fluff-free, no BS information. That's the reason you guys listen to us. So much of the crap that's out there is predicated and built around the idea, it's built on a lie. The lie is that you can build your business based on passive. The lie is that you can drip on people and the business will come to you. The lie is that you can somehow, woo or romance people through your social networking and all your pretty pictures and inspirational quotes and all that crap on Instagram in order to get people to come to you. The lie is you don't have to base your business on skills. And guys, the lie is you can build your business on land that you don't own. Get it? That's the lie. And why are they telling you that lie? Because they want you to buy what they have for sale.
They want you to hit the easy button.
Exactly.
And you want to hit the easy button, don't you? Yes, we know you do. But you know what makes people call? It's very simple. Be the listing agent.
Yeah, be the
Have
listing
what they
agent.
want.
Right. I mean, honestly, real estate is the simplest business, in the easiest business to make the most money, helping the most people that we have ever come across.
As long as you systematize it and you're very clear on
everybody
what
wants
makes
it.
people call. Yes.
Everybody wants you what you got.
Especially
for sale.
now.
Yeah, but you guys make it too damn complicated. I got to build a team. Got to build on my logo, my website, my
double
funnels, my
opt-in
double
page.
and all this stuff. No, you don't. What you have to learn how to do is be a proactive lead generator. You have to know what your real estate magic number is. You have to know what the essence of what the best part of what a real estate business is. And by the way, the essence, the best part of what the business is, you cannot be disintermediated. There's no technologist that's going to be able to remove the relationship or dumb down the relationship or the need for a human-to-human relationship between you and a seller. That's the reason that Julie and I focus on having you guys be listing agents, because all other facets of the business, and we mean this quite literally, they're built on thin ice. Look what's happening to buyer agency right now. It's going to get worse next year. Buyer agents, don't look, new agents listening to us, I realize that the world is telling you to go work buyers first. That's not a bad idea. We think you should work some buyers. Don't buy your damn buyer leads. Go get them from open houses. Earn your buyer leads. Be proactive with getting your buyer leads. The world tells you guys when you get your licenses, you have to join a team. No, you don't. Matter of fact, for many of you, that's one of the worst things you can do. We get emails and messages every single day. I joined a team. They don't do anything for me. The only business I've gotten on my own.
It's actually my next call.
Oh, it
Funny
is?
that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
It is exactly that profile.
So look, you don't have to believe the things that everybody else says. As a matter of fact, it pays you in a market like this to be a skeptic, because all of this Mickey Mouse has come into the industry since really 2008, because there's been so much money. There's been all these real estate tech companies that have come in, and they're all building these little widgets that are essentially placating I have to get more leads. I don't know how to be a proactive lead generator. They're trying to convince you it's harder than it is. It's not. When you look at the top producing agents in the country, and I'm going to really drill down on what that means. Top producing, not necessarily by the most units sold, not necessarily by the biggest dollar volume, but the most profit. Right? The ones making the most profit. Because remember, guys, the product of your business is making profit, and with that profit, you reinvest it. Somebody making $300,000 or $250,000 gross, or even $100,000 gross, if that person is running a smart, proactive lead generation based business, they're going to keep $80,000, $90,000. Well, guys, here's the scary fact. When you look at some of the profit and loss statements from some of these teams and these brokers that might make $800,000, $1 million a year, they're making the exact same amount. They're going to make net around $100,000, $120,000. And yet they have all this added liability and this hassle and this time.
Not to mention the stress of pumping twice the deals that you might need if you were not on a big team with all those expenses.
And you guys get into business, and what does everyone tell you? You plug into the misinformation train. The misinformation train's telling you to spend your money, do this, do the other thing. What we want you to be is independent. What we want you to do is learn how to build a business that's based on profit. Your output, the product of your business, is profit. Is anyone else saying all this to you guys in the real estate industry? Nope.
Nope.
They're not. So listen, if you haven't done your 2022 business plan yet, it's very simple for you. Just text the numbers 2022 to 47372. Text the numbers 2022 to 47372. 2022 to 47372. We're going to text you back your real estate business plan. Fill that in, 63 pages, probably 75% of it is educational. The rest of it's the fill in the blank business plan. Julie and I are going to get to more predictions tomorrow. Guys, listen, thank you for continuing to make this the number one listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Please, please give us an early Christmas present and give us a 5-star review on iTunes. It does matter. Throw in a couple comments. It doesn't take you long. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really does mean a lot to us. It is your way, essentially. That is your price of admission for this podcast, if I might be so bold, right? What that then does is it tells iTunes, it says this podcast is valuable to real estate professionals, not just in the United States, around the world. Help us to grow the audience so that we can return sanity to this industry. This industry, believe it or not, it is the best business you could possibly be in. Every aspect of real estate is the dream scenario for anyone starting a business. This should be how you are rolling out your 2022 mindset. That you're in the right place, you're in the right time. You're absolutely, positively, the move you made getting your license is all fantastic. Look, if you've got some bumps and some bruises, that's okay. That comes with the territory. The wind is at your back as long as you don't turn around. Your move now is get your 2022 business plan done. Text 2022 to 47372. In the meantime, guys, we are going to pick up where we left off today, tomorrow. And if you have any questions or suggestions, please remember you can text me directly at 512-758-0206. Don't call. There will never be a phone that gets answered. I will not answer, but do text. Any ideas, text me directly at 512-758-0206. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.